So for my final project for marketing for 51, I decided on the topic of finding the best NHL team based on home game attendance. So my goal for this project was to find the most popular NHL team based on their attendance figures. I used data for the 2017-2018 season and beyond just because the Las Vegas Golden Knights, their first season was the 2017-2018 season, and they had been doing really well bringing in attendance, and I just kind of wanted to give it a fair shot. I did not use data from the 2019-2020 season just because it hasn't finished, it isn't canceled, there's not really figures out on this season just because there's so much up in the air with the NHL because of COVID-19. So I did use data for the past two seasons just to give the Las Vegas Golden Knights a better chance just because they have been doing relatively well in terms of attendance. So the data that I used was based off of the 40 or 41 home games that the teams had. Every team either had 40 to 41 home games, just kind of depending, it was kind of split. Um, like I said before, I didn't use the 2019-2020 season data just because it's not relatively available and the season's still not technically over, so I didn't want to use that just because there's so much up in the air with it. But the data that I looked into in configuring this out was I looked at average attendance. This was just average attendance of what they were bringing in per game, per season, things like that. Um, I also looked at total attendance. This was their total attendance for the whole 40 to 41 home games that each team had. And the last thing that I looked at was the capacity percentage in the arena. The capacity percentage is how well they were filling up their arena, just in terms of if they could fill it up 90% of the time throughout the entire season, or some teams even filled it up over 100%, so they were filling seats that they didn't even have. They were selling tickets for areas like bar areas or standing room kind of thing. So I looked at those figures as well. So the first thing we are going to look at is the average attendance for the top 10 teams. I just looked at the top 10 teams for each um, category. Um, that's just because there's a lot of teams and the ones kind of at the bottom, it was relatively the same for the top 10 for almost every category with one or two here and there that would kind of change it up. So I just did kind of stick to the top 10 in terms of all of these things. This is the average attendance for the 2017-2018 season. Um, Sitting at the top is the Chicago Blackhawks. They did very well. Um, they averaged 21,653 people a game, and the Montreal Canadiens were actually pretty close at second, but then from second to the third place, it drops off significantly. But also, there's terms of things like each arena size is a little bit different in terms of how many people can attend each game. So arena size does configure into all of this. Um, so that does have to be taken into consideration, which I did. Um, Next is the average attendance for the 2018-2019 season. Again, it is the Chicago Blackhawks sitting atop. They did do a very good job of bringing in people to all of their games. Same thing with the Montreal Canadiens in second again. The Toronto Maple Leafs did do better than where they were before. They moved up some spots. So they did a lot better bringing in people, so that does take in some consideration with how they did. Next is the total attendance for the top 10 teams. Um, Total attendance for the Chicago Blackhawks for their entire season was 887,794. They took the top spot for total attendance for the 2017-2018 season. And second was the Montreal Canadiens. They did do a great job of bringing in people. They are in second, but between first and second to third with the Philadelphia Flyers, there is a pretty good jump between first and second and then third. But again, there's how many people the arena can hold, so that does take some consideration in there. This is the total attendance for the 2018-2019 season. Again, Chicago Blackhawks are in first place with that one. They did drop off a little bit with how their total attendance. They dropped off about 25,000 people, which is a pretty good number, but they're still a lot higher than a lot of other teams. The Washington Capitals did join into this one. The St. Louis Blues did not make the top 10, but the Washington Capitals did jump up. They did relatively well in terms of bringing in more attendance for their team. Next is the capacity percentage for the top 10 teams. This one I weighted a little bit heavier just because of how well teams were doing bringing in fans to their stadium. This is for the 2017-2018 season. The Chicago Blackhawks filled up their arena 109.8%. This is a huge number just because they're filling seats that they don't have. Their arena is filled beyond what they have seats. They're filling in areas of like bar areas, they're filling in standing room seats. And as you can see, all of these top 10 arenas and teams all are over 100%. So all of these teams have filled in their arenas over the numbers of seats that they have. This is a huge deal, showing that hockey is a growing sport, and this is very important numbers to be looking at. Next is the capacity percentage for the 2018-2019 season. Again, the Chicago Blackhawks did a great job of this. Their capacity percentage was a little bit lower than the previous season, but as you can see, the Vegas Knights are sitting really high at 105.5%. This comes right after their Stanley Cup run in the playoffs, and this is only their second season. The 2018-2019 season is only their second season of being a team, and this is really huge for the game of hockey, considering a new team is filling in their stadium 105.5% of what it can hold. With that being said, the most popular NHL team, based on the data of average attendance in the season, their total attendance of the season, and their capacity percentage per season, at number 3 is the Minnesota Wild. They did a great job of their average attendance per season. Their numbers were very high, and their total attendance per season was very high. This doesn't really shock me, just because they are a team up north, and hockey is huge up north and in Canada and where it's cold. So this isn't really shocking, and they did a great job of filling up their stadium capacity-wise. At number 2, looking at the same data of their average attendance, total attendance, and their capacity percentage during the base of the season, number 2 is the Toronto Maple Leafs. This isn't a shock just because they are up north. Hockey in Canada is huge. This is a huge deal for them. They do a really good job season after season of bringing in fans and getting people really engaged in their games. And they do a really great job of just filling in their stadium and bringing in people from all over. And the most popular NHL team, based on all of the data, is the Chicago Blackhawks. The Chicago Blackhawks led the average attendance, they led their total attendance. They were leading every category for these 2 seasons of data that I looked at, which is almost a shock to me. I actually thought it would be a team more up north. Chicago does a fantastic job of bringing in fans and bringing in people to watch their games. This is a very huge deal, just showing that this is something that other NHL teams can look off of and see what they're doing that may be a little bit different than other teams. This is the Chicago Blackhawks have continuously raised the bar in terms of bringing in fans for each game season after season. This is a something that's very important to be looking at